wage slave?
Wage slavery is a term used to refer to a hierarchical social condition in which a person chooses a job but only within a coerced set of choices. For example, work for a boss or starve, which usually excludes democratic workers' control of the workplace and the economy as a whole, and unconditional access to food, shelter, and healthcare. It is a term used to express disapproval of a situation where persons are effectively compelled to work in return for payment of a wage, and are therefore barred from having a say over economic decisions in proportion to the degree they are affected by those decisions. This naturally reduces control over their destinies. Wage slavery is often described as a lack of rights in the market system, especially in the absence of structures stemming from some degree of democratic input.
Dude, what did you just say?
A typical reaction to the concept of wage slavery can be found in the following clip.
Wage slavery, which I consider to be very, very offensive to anyone who actually chooses to work for a living. The expression wage slavery being used by, teenagers who have never worked for a living, who have no idea of the value of money, the requirements of independent life, and who advocate things like, wage is slavery and all things which have no connection to the realities of life. The reality of life is that most people choose to work for a wage because they do not have the resources necessary in order to start a large-scale business, and they do not want to take the risks associated with being an entrepreneur, or they simply don't want to.
Hey YouTube, it's Buddha Gem here, and I've been wanting to do this video for a while now. The reaction we just saw is pretty typical. You either get that, which is, outrage at the idea that we might be slaves, or I usually get just a blank stare. People can't even fathom that the wage system might be a form of slavery. And it's easy to understand. We're born into this system. Just to remind myself and the people I work with, I'll give you a little look at my hard hat here. Wage slave, nice and big, bold letters. And it gets some different reactions from people. Some people understand it, some don't. If you don't understand it, that's what this video is all about. So stick around, because the next clip by one of my favorite radio hosts is a pretty good approximation of the average American.
Here's the life of the typical person in 21st century America. He or she will rise early each day to get into a car and join a traffic jam through a blighted landscape, to go to a hermetically sealed building, to sit in a gray carpeted cubicle or a garish plastic retail outlet and perform repetitive tasks as ordered, for the purpose of earning a measly paycheck from which to pay an exorbitant rent, payments on a car, various insurances that will refuse to pay out when you need them, interest on a credit card, and taxes to a government that is working hard to make sure that this treadmill going nowhere goes on forever. Our typical person will live in fear of losing this hated job, because it could be much worse, and for many it is. Much worse. 1/3 of people on this planet face outright starvation. You can be a prisoner or a prison guard, but even a prison guard spends the equivalent of serving an 11-year sentence inside the walls of a prison by the time he or she retires. Ultimately, it's not even about money. It's about belonging to yourself, about living your life in a beautiful way. Money is just the gatekeeper, the ransom that must somehow be paid, and few can gain enough to get free. And they must do great harm to gain it. So by the time those very few work their way to the top, they are callous and vicious. Most of us have been given a lose-lose choice. you can have a forest or a miserable job in a clear-cut strip mall hell.
The problem here is twofold, in my opinion. On the one hand, we're born into this system, this wage system, so it seems perfectly natural. Second, most of us are robbed of ever learning about our history, the history of working people. You learn about the history of aristocrats, of kings, of noblemen. You don't learn the history of working people and their struggles, particularly with the Industrial Revolution and the struggles that working people went through. So in dealing with the term wage slave, instead of just giving you the definition like I have in the beginning of this video, it's important to take a look back at our labor history. In an excellent book, I don't know if you can read the title with this crazy thing I've got here, but it's called The Industrial Worker by Norman Ware. And it's an excellent book. I hope you'll check it out. I've talked about it in previous videos. But it's full of quotes from working people at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, 1840s, 1850s, talking about this new wage system. It was new at a time. And it wasn't 13-year-old kids who'd never worked before. It was people, working people, who were seeing their entire way of life change, and not for the better. And I quote, "As late as 1854, a little group of highly skilled pianoforte makers in New York declared that a daily wage was equivalent to slavery, and hoped that the day is far distant when they, the wage earners, will so far forget what is due to manhood as to glory in a system forced on them by their necessity and opposition to their feeling of independence and self-respect. May the piano trade long be spared such exhibitions of the degrading power of the day system." This was from the New York Daily Tribune, March 22nd, 1854. From the All, July 7th, 1844. "We are slaves in the strictest sense of the word, for do we not toil from the rising of the sun to the going down of the same for our masters, aye, masters, and for our daily bread?" This from the Lynn Shoemakers. Norman Ware goes on to explain the term wage slave had a much better standing in the 40s than it has today. It was not then regarded as an empty term of the soapbox order. This would suggest that it has suffered only the normal degradation of language, has become a cliche, not that it is a grossly misleading characterization. So dude, you're saying like people didn't used to get paid, or what? Like, if they didn't get paid a wage, how'd people make money and stuff, bro? Good question, and it's easily answered. Prior to this wage system, this nonsensical idea that we can sell our labor power. Yeah, like I'm going to wake my labor power up tomorrow morning at 6 in the morning. I'm going to send it off to work while I sleep in, right? No, labor power is me. You know, there's no labor power. It's me. I can sell myself. I can rent myself. Those are my choices. Prior to that, a real mechanic, real skilled laborer, sold his product. And he made his product at his leisure. You know, there was a balance, an equilibrium. You know, if you wanted a guy to make some shoes for you, yeah, he'd make them. He'd tell you what the price was, and he'd make them at his own leisure. Now, instead, you have a guy who rents out people, you know, and he has them make as many shoes as he can in that 1 hour, and he pays them as little as possible. Very different. Prior to the wage system, there was a fee system. And I'm not saying we go back to anything, but it was vastly different than the wage system. And you have to understand that if you want to understand what anarchists like myself and Mr. 1001 Nights are talking about. When we use this term wage slavery, it's not a term of hyperbole or, you know, some just, you know, mudslinging. It's a reality. You're a friggin' wage slave, okay? I'm a wage slave. I rent myself by the hour. Don't be offended. Fight for your freedom.
The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united.